Hello, everyone. My name is Malcolm Eastman, and today I want to just show you guys DHCP, right, in packet tracer. So I previously did a lab where I showed you guys DHCP snooping, which DHCP snooping is essentially a security protocol that basically inspects DHCP requests from end clients where you set up untrusted and trusted ports so that you make sure that your DHCP server is not subject to unwanted requests from malicious end hosts, right? But in order for you to understand DHCP snooping, you obviously have to understand DHCP. So, what is DHCP? DHCP is a protocol that allows us to dynamically assign IP addresses, DNS servers, as well as default gateways to end hosts, right? If you have a at-home router, a so-home router, that's most likely your DHCP server, right? Where your end devices are dynamically getting IP addresses. And again, dynamically, again, it's where we as the network professionals are not statically assigning IP addresses. So dynamic is the opposite of static. And static is a manual configuration. So we don't have to manually assign IP addresses. And this is really, really useful when you work for enterprises or schools or you work in healthcare where you don't have to sit there and dynamically and manually assign an IP address to each and every single device. Now, obviously, you still want to reserve and exclude addresses for particular devices. So, like for instance, a good rule of a good practice is you want to exclude the default gateway address. So whatever the default gateway address is, you want that to be excluded from the DHCP pool, right? That's what we would call that group of addresses. We call it a DHCP pool. And the sizes vary. That kind of depends on the subnet, how big the subnet is or how small the subnet is. And we can definitely talk about leasing DHCP. There's also this thing called leasing addresses. So it's exactly what it sounds like. You have a certain amount of time with a particular address, right? I know for where I work, right? Clients are end devices such as laptops don't hold on to a DHCP address forever, right? So there may maybe one day I may go there and I might be, 192.10.10.1. I'm not the one, but 4 or 5. And then tomorrow I log into my laptop and I might be a totally different IP address, right? So that's DHCP leasing. But I'm not really going to get into that. This is going to be pretty basic configuration, as you can see on the screen. I have sales and HR. These are two different departments that I'm going to create two different DHCP pools for, right? So sales has got 3 computers and a server, and then HR has got 2 PCs, right? And I got this one router in the middle. That's essentially going to be our DHCP pool, right? For both sides. So what type of devices can you use DHCP, can you create DHCP pools on? So routers are one, right? Obviously here in this particular demonstration, I'm going to use a router. You can also use firewalls, like next generation firewalls can also be used to be DHCP servers. Servers themselves, so Windows Server has where you add functions or add services to the Windows Server, you can add DHCP to, and that could be your DHCP server, right? So you can use different devices to be your DHCP server. But again, for this one, we're going to be using our router. And for this lab, pretty much most of the configuration is going to be on this router, right? So we have 2 switches and then we have our end host, right? So I want to jump into my switch, sorry, my router. And I do not want to name, I don't want to go through the configuration dialog. So I'm going to do naval conf T, and then I'm going to do host name, and this is going to be just router one. And I want to turn on my two interfaces. So interface range G0/1 to 2. Oh, wait a minute. That might not be, it might be this. G0/0/1. Yes, there it is. So we're going to do no shuts. Because again, by default, the interfaces are going to be off on a router. Right? So now we got our two interfaces up. And I'm going to exit. So now I want to configure my first DHCP pool. Right? So my first DHCP pool, I'm going to do, this is going to be for sales. So IP DHCP pool. And we're going to name our pool. And again, this is a good this is good for your practice, right? When you're in a production network, you want to name who this pool is for. So if this is for sales, HR, this is for shipping, finance, whatever department it is, or if it's for, let's just say it's for the entire building, which generally you might not see that. Generally, we might, usually what I've seen is we separate the pools to keep things segregated and make things very manageable. Um, you want to name it, right? It's like when we name our VLANs, who's in this VLAN? HR. We're going to name it HR. So for this pool, this is going to be for sales. So I'm going to just put sales, right? So now we are in our DHCP pool configuration. So I want to create, what I want to do is I want to create the pool, right? So it's going to be network, and I'm going to do 100.0.0.0. That's our pool. And then I want to also preference the subnet mask, right? That's our network, right? We have our network at the first, which is 100.100.0, sorry, 100.0.0.0, and then our WAG24 subnet mask, right? I also want to talk about the default gateway or default router, right? In case, the command's default router. And it's going to be 100.0.0.0.1, right? And I'm just going to add a DNS server in there as well, right? We'll just make it up. It'll be 1.1.1, just for the demonstration, right? So we're going to hit exit. And remember what I said about reserving addresses. So on the switch, right, you could do, now again, it varies like on on next generation firewalls and servers, the exact setup is going to vary based on the device and OS. But for Cisco and the router, the command is going to be excluded. Oh no, sorry. It's going to be IP DHCP excluded address. So if you want to exclude a range of addresses, you would type in, so like let's say I wanted to do 100.100.100 to 100.0.0.0 to 100.0.0.10. I would do 100.0.0.10. What that command is going to do, it's going to reserve all of these addresses from 100.0.0. Well, actually, it wouldn't be zero. Sorry, it'd be one. 100.0.0.1 to 10. So I would be able to statically assign those addresses because I don't want my DHCP server to give out those addresses, right? But I just want to exclude one. So it's going to be 100.0.0.1 because I preferenced here that our default gateway is going to be 100.0.0.1, right? So that's our DHCP pool for that one. Now I want to configure another one, right? So what I do, I'm going to create another DHCP pool, IP DHCP pool, and this one is going to be for HR, right? So now this so it's going to be network, and I'm going to do 100.0.1.0, and it's going to be 255.255.255.0. Our default gateway or default router is going to be 100.0.1.1. And then I'm going to do DNS server, and this one's going to be 2.2.2, right? Hit exit. And again, on this one, I want to do IP excluded, sorry, DHCP excluded address, and that's going to be 100.0.1.1. Because I already preferenced that's our default route, right? Now, I need to add these IP addresses to each of the interfaces, right? So I need to add these default gateway addresses, right? So we're going to go into our interfaces. So it's going to be interface G0/0/1. And we're going to do IP add 100.0.0.1.255.255.255.0 for our WAC24 address. And then we're going to do interface G0/0/2. And we're going to do IP add 100.0.1.255.255.255.0, right? And we're going to hit exit. We're going to hit exit again. And let's just double check. I just want to make sure I figured it right. Oh, I did make a mistake. So I accidentally put the address on the wrong interface. Correct that. Interface G. No IP address. 0. Shut down. Shut down. And put the IP address on the correct interface, right? Shut. And we're going to do IP add 100.100.1.255.255.255.0. And we're going to hit end, exit. And since I put them on the wrong side, what I'm going to have to do, this interface, which is Z01, sorry, this is G01. I'm going to have to move over here, and then G000, I'm going to have to put over there. So what I'm going to do, I want to move the whole router. Just want to move these two around. So G00 is going to go over here. And then G01 is going to go over here. Let's see, G01, G00. Okay. So now I've configured the DHCP server on our router. I did 2 pools. I named those pools. I did the network command to preference the DHCP pool and the subnet mask for that particular pool. I indicated default router, and I also indicated the DNS server. So now I want to allocate these addresses to these end hosts. So I'm going to go on PC1 and I'm going to go to command prompt. And the way that I get a IP address on my computer is two ways, right? So obviously, if we're doing it through the GUI, right, you would go into your IP configuration and you would just click DHCP, right? I'm going to do that on another PC, but I want to show you on the command line. So we'll go to the command line and it's going to be IP config /renew. And as you can see here, I got an IP address, right? And it has my DNS server. It's got my default gateway, subnet mask, and everything. What if I wanted to release it, right? Let's say I wanted a new address. Release. Now I don't have an IP address, right? And now I can just renew again. Let's wait. And now I get that same address back. Right? So let's go down to another PC. Let's go to PC2. Let's go to desktop. Let's hit DHCP and click it. And it'll show that I successfully got a DHCP request, right? Let's go to 3, do the same thing. Let's do it in the command line this time. IP config /renew. Got another IP address. Let's go down here. Let's go to our command prompt, IP config /new. Oh wait, I totally forgot. That's not available on the server. So instead, let's just do DHCP here, and then boom, it's got a IP address, right? So let's go to desktop, go to IP config, and you can see here we have our IP address. Now you can do the same thing. You can do DHCP with IPv6 as well. Well, let's go over to PC5 and show you that. I want to show you a difference, right? So I do DHCP, and then it got an IP address because what it's doing is communicating to this side of the router, and it's asking, "Hey, I've been configured to do DHCP. What's my DHCP address?" DHCP server, and the DHCP server will then send that address over. And let's go to PC4 and just do the same thing really quick. So just that, so we have everybody configured, right? So now we have sales and HR with DHCP addresses. And then from here, what you'd want to do is configure DHCP snooping, right? And the reason we want to do that again is because, again, we want to make sure only our trusted devices, right? Only our end users are getting DHCP addresses, right? And that's why we use DHCP snooping, and we configure that on untrusted ports. And remember, our untrusted ports are going to be our ports that would be facing end users, right? Because we're going to be very, very suspicious of those ports, right? We always want to be very suspicious, and it's because we don't want to be giving out DHCP addresses to malicious individuals, right? Our hackers, right? So again, we configured our DHCP hosts. I'm sorry, our server. We didn't have to do anything on the PC, but enter the command line, or if you're going into the network settings and clicking DHCP to get that address dynamically. And again, we also got to make sure we're always excluding addresses. Certain addresses we want to exclude. We want this address to always be associated with this particular end host. That's what you're doing when you're excluding addresses, because you're basically telling that router, do not ever give this address, because this address I'm going to statically assign, and until further notice, is going to be permanently assigned to this particular end host, right? That could be a firewall, that could be routers, servers, whatever you want to reserve addresses. But again, generally what I've seen is the end hosts usually have a lease. And the reason we do that is so we kind of have a rotating, the addresses rotate, right? We don't want those addresses um to get exhausted, right? We don't want our pool come exhausted, so we do a lease. And again, if addresses are getting too exhausted, we might want to maybe decrease that lease to where it rotates a little more frequently. But generally, that's your best practice, making sure you have that little DHCP leases on there, right? So yeah, this has been our little mini lab on DHCP. Again, remember DHCP is our dynamic host configuration protocol, right? It's the opposite of static, right? Think of when we think of dynamic, right? Think of OSPF, DHCP, right? Where we, the IT professional, the network professional, is not going in and entering every single command. We enter a couple commands, and then our devices will kind of fill in the blanks for us, right? So for this instance, our router is filling in the blanks by setting up those addresses. So this has been a little tutorial on DHCP. I hope you've learned something. And again, if you have any questions, you can reach out to me by my email at malcolm@malcolmeastman.tech or on LinkedIn. You can search me up at Malcolm Eastman. Please have a great day, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.